Hyunwoo Park sat at his old wooden desk, looking at the daily reports on his computer screen. The morning sun came through the window of his small office, lighting up papers scattered everywhere. Outside, he could see the endless green fields of rice that stretched to the hills far away. This was New Gangwon, a quiet farming world at the edge of human space. The reports were the same as always. Farm production was good. The weather was nice. No problems with the machines. No sick people. Everything was peaceful and normal, just like every other day for the past 3 years. Hyunwoo was 42 years old and had been the colony administrator for New Gangwon since the beginning. He was not tall, with short black hair that was starting to turn gray. Most people thought he looked like a typical office worker, nothing special. He wore simple clothes and spoke quietly. Nobody would think he was anything more than a man who filled out forms and managed farming schedules. A soft knock came at his door. "Come in," Hyunwoo said, not looking up from his screen. Dae-ho Kim walked into the office. He was 28 years old and worked as the communications officer for the colony. Dae-ho was thin and wore thick glasses. He always looked nervous. About something. Like he was worried he might break the expensive communication equipment he worked with every day. "Administrator Park," Dae-ho said, holding a small tablet. "I have the weekly communication report." "What news from the outside?" Hyunwoo asked, finally looking up. Dae-ho pushed his glasses up his nose. "Not much, sir. It has been 6 months since our last supply ship from Earth. The nearest colony is New Seoul, but they are 4 weeks away by ship. No messages from Earth. Command. No news from other worlds." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. This was normal for New Gangwon. The colony was so far from everything else that most people forgot it existed. Earth had bigger things to worry about than 50,000 farmers growing rice and vegetables on a world nobody cared about. "Are people asking about the supply ship?" Hyunwoo asked. "A few people," Dae-ho said. "But most families have enough food stored. The farms grow everything we need. People are not worried." "Good. Anything else?" "One strange thing," Dae-ho said, looking at his tablet. "Last night, the deep space sensors picked up something. Probably just space rock or old satellite pieces. But the computer recorded it." Hyunwoo's face did not change, but his eyes became more focused. "Show me." Dae-ho turned his tablet around. On the screen was a simple graph with a small spike. It happened at 0347 hours. Very weak signal. The computer almost missed it. "Where did it come from?" "The edge of our system. About 72 hours away if something was traveling toward us." Hyunwoo looked at the graph for a long moment. To Dae-ho, it looked like nothing important. But Hyunwoo studied it carefully, like it contained secrets. "Thank you, Dae-ho. File the report as normal. If you see anything else, tell me right away." "Yes, sir." Dae-ho left the office, closing the door behind him. After Dae-ho was gone, Hyunwoo touched a hidden button under his desk. A small panel opened in the wall, showing communication equipment that looked much more advanced than anything a simple farming colony should have. He typed in a code and waited. Outside his office, the colony continued its daily routine. New Gangwon had 5 main settlements connected by simple roads. Each settlement had about 10,000 people living in small houses with gardens. Between the settlements were huge fields where machines grew rice, vegetables, and fruits that would be shipped to other worlds. In the central settlement where Hyunwoo worked, Mi-jin Lee was teaching her morning class. She was 31 years old with long black hair and a kind smile. The children loved her because she made learning fun. Today she was teaching basic mathematics to 20 young students. "Now," Mi-jin said, writing numbers on the board. If a ship travels at 50,000 kilometers per hour and needs to reach a target that is 3 million kilometers away, how long will it take? A boy named Jun Ho raised his hand. 60 hours, Teacher Lee. Very good, Mi Jin smiled. And if the ship needs to change direction halfway through its journey, what calculations would the pilot need to make? The students worked on their tablets, solving problems that seemed like simple math. But if anyone paid close attention, they might notice that these math problems sounded a lot like space navigation and targeting calculations. After class, Mi Jin walked with her students through the main square of the settlement. In the center stood a tall stone statue of 3 figures. The bottom said, First Settlement Wars Memorial, in honor of those who defended human space. Teacher Lee, asked a girl named So Young, what were the first settlement wars? Mi Jin looked up at the statue. Long ago, bad aliens attacked human colonies. Brave people fought to protect their homes and families. We built this statue so we would never forget their sacrifice. Were there battles here on New Gangwon? No, So Young. New Gangwon was settled after the wars ended. We have always been peaceful here. The children nodded and continued walking. They did not notice that Mi Jin's hand briefly touched a small device on her belt, or that her eyes quickly checked the sky above them. Across town, Sang-woo Choi was working in his fields. He was 35 years old, with strong arms from years of farm work. His family had been farmers for generations, and he knew everything about growing rice. His fields produced more food per hectare than any other farm on New Gangwon. Sang-woo drove his harvesting machine through rows of rice plants. The machine looked normal, like the farming equipment used on 100 other worlds. It cut the rice, cleaned the grain, and stored it in large containers. But as Sang-woo worked, he made small adjustments to settings that had nothing to do with farming. He touched a control panel and hidden sensors on the machine, quietly tested the air, and scanned the sky above. Another adjustment and communication equipment built into the harvester sent a brief signal to similar machines working in fields across the planet. To anyone watching, Sang-woo was just a farmer doing his job. But the machines he controlled were doing much more than farming. In the settlement's small medical clinic, Yoon-hye Nam was checking her supplies. She was 29 years old and the only doctor for 15,000 people. She had studied medicine on Earth before coming to New Gangwon to help the colonists. Yoon-hye counted bandages, checked medicine bottles, and made sure all her equipment was working properly. For a simple farming colony, her clinic was very well supplied. She had medicines and tools that could treat almost any injury or sickness. As she worked, Yoon-hye quietly moved some supplies from storage rooms that most people did not know existed. These supplies were marked with codes that had nothing to do with normal medical care. They were the kind of supplies a military field hospital would need during a battle. At the power station, Ji-ho Yoon was running his daily equipment checks. He was 33 years old and had worked with electrical systems his whole life. The power station for New Gangwon provided electricity for all 5 settlements, plus the farms and communication systems. Ji-ho looked at his control screens, checking power levels and system status. Everything showed normal readings, but Ji-ho also checked readings that were hidden from the main displays. These showed that the power station was actually producing 10 times more electricity than the colony seemed to need. Where was all that extra power going? Ji-ho smiled to himself as he made small adjustments to systems that officially did not exist. As the day ended, the people of New Gangwon finished their work and went home to their families. Children played in the streets, adults shared dinner, and talked about their crops and weather. Everyone seemed relaxed and happy. Hyunwoo finished his paperwork and locked his office. As he walked home, he looked like any other tired administrator after a long day of boring government work, but hidden in his pocket was a small device that had been quietly receiving messages all day. Messages from places that were supposed to be simple farms and normal businesses. Messages that confirmed what the deep space sensors had detected. Something was coming toward New Gangwon, and despite how peaceful and defenseless the colony appeared, Hyunwoo was not worried. In fact, he was almost looking forward to it. Far away from New Gangwon, in the cold darkness of space, 12 large warships dropped out of hyperspace. The ships were black and angular, with sharp edges that looked like weapons themselves. They belonged to the Vorthon Empire, a race of aliens who made their living by attacking and robbing other species. On the command bridge of the largest ship, War Captain Thexmore stood looking at the star charts. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His species had evolved from hunters, and they still thought like predators. The Vorthans had been raiding human colonies for 2 years, and they had become very good at it. "Report," Thexmore ordered in his harsh voice. Scout leader Crixvan approached the command chair. He was smaller than the war captain, with quicker movements and sharper teeth. "We are at the edge of the target system, War Captain. All ships are ready for the attack." Thexmore looked at the intelligence report on his screen. The information had been gathered by Vorthon spies over many months. "Tell me about this human settlement again." "New Gangwon," Crixvan read from his tablet. "Population, 50,000 humans, primary function, agricultural production, no orbital, defenses detected, no military vessels in the system, no planetary shields. The humans grow food and ship it to other worlds. Military forces, none detected. Our scouts found no evidence of soldiers, weapons, or defense systems. The humans appear to be entirely civilian farmers and their families." Thexmore smiled, showing his sharp teeth. This would be easy. The Vorthans had attacked 17 human colonies in the past 2 years. Each time the pattern was the same. The humans would beg for mercy, offer their resources, and then submit to being taken as slaves. Some colonies tried to fight back, but civilian farmers with simple tools were no match for Vorthan warriors. "How long since their last contact with Earth?" Thexmore asked. 6 months, War Captain. No supply ships, no military patrols, no communication with other human worlds. They are completely isolated." "Perfect. Isolated colonies were the easiest targets. No one would come to help them. No one would even know they were being attacked until it was too late. And their resources?" "Excellent," Crixvan said, his eyes glowing with greed. "Large food stores, farming equipment, transport ships, and 50,000 healthy humans for the slave markets. This single raid will provide enough profit to fund our fleet for a full year." Thexmore stood up from his command. "Chair, signal all ships. We attack in 72 hours. Standard raiding formation. 8 ships remain in orbit for bombardment support. 4 ships land troops for capture operations." "Yes, War Captain," Crixvan replied. "Should we send the usual surrender demand?" "Of course. Give them a chance to submit peacefully. Humans are more valuable as slaves when they are not damaged." The Vorthon fleet began moving toward New Gangwon. Their ships were fast and well armed. They had energy weapons that could destroy cities, and they carried thousands of warriors trained for capturing colonies. In their experience, no human farming settlement could resist them for more than a few minutes. While the alien fleet approached, life on New Gang 1 continued as normal. Most of the colonists had no idea that danger was coming. They worked in their fields, attended school, and enjoyed peaceful evenings with their families. But some people on New Gang 1 were paying attention to things that others missed. In his office, Hyun-woo studied the readings from the deep space sensors. The hidden equipment in his wall was much more powerful than anything Dae-ho knew about. It could detect ships at incredible distances and analyze their movement patterns. Hyun-woo's face was calm, but his fingers moved quickly across the advanced control panel. He was sending coded messages to specific people across the colony. To anyone watching, it would look like routine administrative communications. But the messages contained information that had nothing to do with farming schedules or supply deliveries. Dae-ho knocked on the door and entered the office. "Administrator Park, I have the daily communication log." "Any more unusual readings?" Hyun-woo asked. "Nothing new on the main sensors," Dae-ho said. "But I noticed something strange. Our power usage increased by 15% last night. I checked with Ji-ho at the power station, but he said everything was normal." Hyun-woo nodded. "Probably just seasonal changes in the farming equipment, nothing to worry about." Dae-ho accepted the explanation, but he was starting to notice more small things that did not quite make sense. Why did Administrator Park seem so calm about being cut off from Earth for 6 months? Why did some of the farmers have communication, equipment that was more advanced than what the government office used? Why did the medical clinic have enough supplies to treat a major disaster when nothing bad ever happened on New Gang 1? After Dae-ho left, Hyun-woo activated a secure communication channel. His call was answered by someone who looked like a farmer, but spoke with the precise voice of a military officer. "Status report," Hyun-woo said quietly. "All stations are ready," came the reply. "Equipment checks complete. Personnel in position. We can begin final preparations on your order." "Understood. Begin Phase 1 activation. Keep it quiet." "Confirmed. Phase 1 activation in progress." Across New Gang 1, people who appeared to be simple farmers began making small changes to their daily routines. These changes would not be noticed by casual observers, but they were the beginning of something much larger. At the school, Mi-jin was teaching her afternoon science class. Today's lesson was about physics and energy transfer. She showed the children how to calculate the force needed to move objects at different speeds. If you wanted to move a very heavy object, Mi-jin explained, you would need to apply force at exactly the right angle and speed. Too little force, and the object will not move. Too much force, and you might break something important. The children worked on their tablets, solving problems about moving objects and calculating force angles. Again, the math seemed simple, but the problems were actually about ballistics and targeting calculations. After school, Mi-jin walked to the town's small library. In the basement, she accessed a computer terminal that was connected to systems the children never saw. She entered her daily report and received new instructions for tomorrow's lessons. The children of New Gang 1 were learning more than their parents realized. In his fields, Sang-woo continued his farming work, but now his machines were running. Different programs. Hidden sensors in the harvesting equipment were scanning the sky more frequently. Communication arrays disguised as irrigation systems were connecting to similar equipment on farms across the planet. Sang-woo received a coded message on his tablet. To anyone reading it, the message looked like information about crop schedules and weather forecasts. But Sang-woo understood the real meaning. He had 3 days to complete final preparations. He smiled as he continued driving his harvester through the rice fields. The machine looked peaceful and slow, but it contained systems that could track and target objects moving at incredible speeds. At the medical clinic, Yunhai was working late, organizing supplies and checking equipment. She moved carefully between storage rooms, gathering materials from hidden compartments. Her clinic was preparing to handle casualties, but not the kind that came from farming accidents. Yunhai had trained as a combat medic before becoming a colonial doctor. She knew how to treat injuries from energy weapons, explosions, and high-speed impacts. She hoped she would not need those skills, but she was ready if the time came. At the power station, Jiho was running diagnostics on systems that did not appear on any public blueprints. The power station could generate enough electricity to supply a major city, not just a farming colony. Most of that power was stored in hidden capacitor banks that could discharge massive amounts of energy very quickly. Jiho checked the connections to equipment that was buried beneath the colony, equipment that had been installed during the original construction of New Gangwon, but never appeared on official records. As night fell, Hyunwoo stood outside his office, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien warships were approaching his world. They thought they were hunting helpless farmers. They had no idea what was really waiting for them. Hyunwoo touched the communication device in his pocket. Soon, he would give the order that would change everything. But for now, New Gangwon would continue to look like a peaceful farming colony. The deception had worked perfectly for 3 years. In 3 more days, Hyunwoo would find out just how effective it really was. He walked home through the quiet streets, past houses where families were eating dinner and children were playing. Everything looked normal and innocent. But beneath the surface, New Gangwon was preparing for war. The next morning brought changes that only trained eyes would notice. To most of the people on New Gangwon, it seemed like another normal day. But for those who knew what to look for, the colony was transforming. Sang-woo arrived at his fields earlier than usual. His harvesting machine looked the same as always, but today he was making adjustments that had nothing to do with farming. He opened hidden panels in the machine's hull and checked systems that were definitely not designed for cutting rice. The machine's scanning array, disguised as a weather monitoring system, was now running continuous sweeps of the sky above. Its communication equipment, hidden inside what looked like grain storage containers, was coordinating with identical machines across the planet. Most importantly, the machine's main engine was connected to systems that could rapidly transform the peaceful harvester into something very different. Sang-woo tested these systems carefully, making sure everything was ready for immediate activation. "Morning, Sang-woo," called his neighbor, an older farmer named Dong-min. "Starting early today?" "Just want to finish the north field before the weather changes," Sang-woo replied, his voice casual and friendly. "How are your crops doing?" "Very well. Though I noticed your irrigation system was running all night. Everything okay?" Sang-woo smiled. "Just testing the automatic schedules. Want to make sure everything works properly." Dong-min nodded and continued walking. He did not notice that Sang-woo's irrigation system had been sending and receiving data all night, coordinating with similar systems on every farm on the planet. After Dong-min was gone, Sang-woo returned to his work. He drove the harvester to different sections of his field, but his real purpose was testing the machine's mobility and response time. The harvester could move much faster than it appeared, and it could deploy its hidden systems in less than 30 seconds. Across the colony, similar preparations were happening at dozens of locations. At the power station, Jiho was conducting what he called routine maintenance. But the maintenance involved activating systems that had been dormant for 3 years. Deep beneath the colony, massive generators hummed to life. Energy storage systems that could power a battleship began charging to full capacity. The official power grid showed normal usage levels, but the hidden grid was drawing enormous amounts of energy. This energy was being stored in underground facilities that did not appear on any public maps. Jiho's assistant, a young engineer named Wu Jin, was helping with the maintenance. Wu Jin had been working at the power station for 2 years, but he had never seen some of the equipment they were testing today. "What is this system for?" Wu Jin asked, looking at a control panel with dozens of indicators he did not recognize. "Emergency backup power," Jiho replied, "in case we lose the main generators during a storm." But this system could power the entire colony for weeks. "Why do we need so much backup power?" Jiho continued his work without looking up. "It is better to be prepared than sorry. You never know what might happen." Wu Jin accepted the explanation, but he was starting to realize that there were many things about New Gangwon that he did not understand. At the medical clinic, Yoon Hae was preparing for what she told her staff was a disaster preparedness drill. She moved supplies from hidden storage areas and set up additional treatment stations in rooms that normally stored farming equipment. Her assistant, a nurse named Hye Jin, was confused by some of the equipment they were setting up. "Dr. Nam, this surgical equipment looks very advanced. Where did it come from?" "Emergency medical supplies from Earth," Yoon-hee replied. "We keep them in storage in case of major accidents. But some of these tools are designed for treating energy weapon burns and explosive injuries. Why would farmers need equipment like this?" Yoon-hye paused in her work. "Farming can be dangerous, Hye-jin. Heavy machinery, electrical systems, chemical fertilizers. We need to be ready for any kind of accident." Hee-jin nodded, but she was beginning to suspect that her boss was preparing for accidents that had nothing to do with farming. At the school, Mi-jin was teaching a special lesson to her older students. She told them it was advanced mathematics, but the problems she gave them were actually tactical calculations. If multiple objects are moving toward a target from different directions, Mi-jin explained, how do you calculate the timing needed to hit the target simultaneously? The students worked eagerly on their tablets, not realizing they were learning how to coordinate missile strikes. After class, Mi-jin walked with some of her students to what she called the Cultural Center. This was a large underground facility that officially stored historical artifacts and educational materials. But today, Mi-jin was leading the children to sections of the Cultural Center that contained something much more important. "Why are we going to the deep storage areas?" asked one of the students, a smart girl named Yu-jin. "I want to show you some special historical exhibits," Mi-jin replied. "Things about the early days of human space exploration." The deep storage areas were actually advanced shelter facilities designed to protect the colony's children during emergencies. They had their own power systems, air recycling, food storage, and communication equipment. The children thought they were just visiting a museum. "These rooms are very big," observed a boy named Tai-ho. "And they have very thick walls. The early colonists built everything to last," Mi-jin said. "They wanted to make sure important things would be safe no matter what happened." The children explored the shelter areas, not knowing they were seeing their own emergency refuge. Mi-jin made sure they all knew how to reach these rooms quickly in case they ever needed to. Meanwhile, in the main communications center, Daeho was starting to notice more strange things. The colony's communication traffic had increased dramatically over the past day, but most of the messages were encrypted or coded in ways he did not recognize. Administrator Park, Daeho said when Hyunwoo arrived at the office. Our communication usage is up 300% from yesterday. Are we having equipment problems? No problems, Hyunwoo replied. I authorized some additional data transfers for administrative purposes. But some of these signals are going to locations that are not in our official contact list, and the encryption protocols are much more advanced than anything we normally use. Hyunwoo looked directly at Daeho. Daeho, you have been a good communications officer for 2 years. You are reliable and careful with sensitive information. Can I trust you to keep doing your job without asking too many questions? Daeho felt a chill. Yes, sir, of course. Good. There may be some unusual activity over the next few days. Government business. I need you to process all communications normally and not discuss them with anyone else. Understood, Administrator Park. After Daeho left, Hyunwoo activated his hidden communication system. He sent a coded message that was received by every settlement on New Gangwon. Phase 2 activation authorized. All units prepare for final deployment. Across the colony, people who had been living as farmers and shopkeepers and teachers began revealing skills they had kept hidden for 3 years. Young-Sik Han, who ran a livestock farm outside the main settlement, opened a concealed entrance in his barn. Inside was not livestock equipment, but a sophisticated sensor and tracking facility. Young-Sik had been monitoring space traffic around New Gangwon since the colony was founded, using equipment that could detect and analyze ships at incredible distances. Bora Jang, who managed several large greenhouses, activated hidden communication arrays built into her irrigation systems. These arrays could coordinate with similar equipment across the planet, creating a communication network that could function even if the main systems were destroyed. Kyung-ho Shin, who operated a small transportation company, began checking vehicles that looked like normal cargo haulers but contained advanced defensive systems. His drivers were not just delivery workers. They were trained to move people and equipment quickly during emergencies. As evening approached, the colonists went about their normal activities. Families had dinner together, children played in the streets. Adults discussed crops and weather and local news. But beneath this peaceful surface, New Gangwon was becoming something entirely different. Hidden weapon systems completed their activation sequences. Underground facilities hummed with power. Communication networks linked every defensive position on the planet. Personnel who had spent 3 years pretending to be farmers took inventory of equipment they hoped they would never need to use. In his office, Hyunwoo received the final status reports. Every system was ready. Every person was in position. New Gangwon looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but now it was prepared for anything. Hyunwoo opened a communication channel to deep space. His message was brief and would seem meaningless to anyone who intercepted it. Harvest season begins tomorrow. Weather forecast is excellent. Far away, moving through the darkness between stars, alien warships received automated responses from their target system. The responses confirmed what their intelligence had told them. New Gangwon was a defenseless farming colony with no military capabilities. The Vorthon fleet emerged from hyperspace like a pack of predators smelling blood. 12 warships appeared in high orbit around New Gangwon, their dark hulls bristling with weapons designed to terrorize and destroy. On the command bridge of the flagship, War Captain Thexmore studied the peaceful world below through his tactical displays. Target analysis complete, Scout Leader Crixven reported. The human settlement appears exactly as our intelligence indicated. No orbital defenses, no military installations, no armed vessels. I am detecting agricultural areas, small towns, and civilian communication networks. Thexmore nodded with satisfaction. The planet looked helpless, just as expected. He could see farming areas spread across the continents, connected by simple roads. Small settlements dotted the landscape, with no defensive barriers or weapon. Emplacements visible anywhere. Defensive scan results? Thexmore asked. None detected, Crixvin replied confidently. No energy shields, no surface-to-orbit weapons, no fighter craft. The only military equipment I can find is basic communications, gear, and civilian transport vehicles. Perfect. Signal all ships. Begin standard intimidation protocol. On the surface of New Gang 1, in the main communication center, alarms began sounding as Dayho detected the alien ships appearing in orbit. He stared at his screens in shock, watching as 12 large vessels took positions around the planet. Administrator. "Park!" Dayho called out, his voice filled with panic. "We have ships in orbit! 12 large vessels, unknown configuration!" Hyun Woo entered the communications center, moving calmly despite the emergency. He looked at the display screens showing the alien fleet, his expression serious but not surprised. "Are they trying to communicate with us?" Hyun Woo asked. "Yes, sir. Incoming transmission on all frequencies. They are demanding we respond immediately. Put it on speakers." The communication center filled with a harsh alien voice speaking accented human language. "Human settlement of New Gang 1. This is War Captain Thexmore of the Vorthon Empire. Your world is now under our authority. You will surrender all resources and submit your population for relocation. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your settlements." Dayho looked at Hyun Woo with terror in his eyes. "What do we do? Should I contact Earth? Command? Should I send emergency signals to other colonies?" Hyun Woo touched Dayho's shoulder reassuringly. "Open a response channel. I will handle this." "But Administrator Park, we have no defenses. We are just farmers. These aliens will destroy us." "Open the channel, Dayho. Trust me." With shaking hands, Dayho activated the communication system. Hyun Woo spoke in a calm, respectful voice that carried no hint of fear or defiance. "Vorthon vessels, this is Administrator Hyun Woo Park of New Gangwon Colony. We are a peaceful agricultural settlement with no military forces. We have 50,000 civilian residents, mostly farmers and their families. We request safe passage for our non-combatant population. In orbit, War Captain Thexmore listened to the humans' response with satisfaction. The colony administrator sounded exactly like all the other humans they had raided, frightened, helpless, and ready to surrender. "Your request is noted," Thexmore replied. "Prepare all resources for transfer to our vessels. Gather your population in designated areas for processing. You have 1 hour to comply before we begin enforcement actions." The transmission ended, leaving the communication center in silence. Dayho stared at Hyun Woo in disbelief. "That is it?" Dayho asked. "We are just going to surrender. We need to fight back. We need to call for help." Hyun Woo moved to a control panel that Dayho had never seen him use before. Hidden interfaces appeared as Hyun Woo entered authorization codes. "Dayho, I need you to listen very carefully. In about 10 minutes, some unusual things are going to happen. When they do, I want you to stay in this building and follow any instructions I give you. Do not try to leave. Do not try to contact anyone outside the colony. Can you do that?" "I do not understand. What unusual things?" Hyun Woo finished entering his codes and turned to face Dayho. For the first time, the young communications Officer saw something in his administrator's eyes that looked nothing like a frightened farmer. It looked like the expression of a predator that had been waiting patiently for prey to come within striking distance. Dae-ho, New Gang 1 is not exactly what it appears to be. You are about to learn some things that may surprise you. Before Dae-ho could respond, Hyun-woo activated a colony-wide communication system that connected to every settlement, every farm, and every hidden facility on the planet. His voice went out to thousands of people who had been waiting for this moment. All stations, this is Colony Command. We have 12 Vorthon warships in orbit beginning standard raiding operations. Threat assessment, manageable. All units are authorized to proceed to full combat readiness. Repeat, proceed to full combat readiness. Harvest time has arrived. Across New Gang 1, the message was received by people who immediately understood its meaning. The response was swift and coordinated. At his farm, Sang-woo received the authorization and smiled grimly. He activated the hidden systems in his harvesting machine, and the peaceful agricultural equipment began its transformation. Armor plating emerged from concealed compartments. Sensor arrays extended from what had appeared to be grain storage tanks. Weapon systems deployed from agricultural attachments. In less than 60 seconds, Sang-woo's harvester had become a mobile weapons platform capable of engaging targets in orbit. Similar transformations were happening at farms across the planet. Hundreds of machines that had spent 3 years disguising themselves as agricultural equipment revealed their true nature. The colony's farming infrastructure was actually a distributed defensive network that had been designed to look completely harmless. At the power station, Ji-ho began bringing massive systems online. Underground generators that had been running at minimum power surged to full capacity. Energy storage banks that could power a space station discharged into weapon systems that had been hidden beneath the colony for 3 years. At the medical clinic, Yoon-hae activated emergency protocols that transformed the small rural hospital into a military treatment facility capable of handling battle casualties. Young-sik's livestock farm revealed its true purpose as a sophisticated tracking and targeting center. His animals were real, but his barns contained sensor equipment that could pinpoint enemy vessels with incredible accuracy. Bora's greenhouses became communication hubs that coordinated the actions of defensive units across the planet. Her irrigation systems were actually data networks that could function even under combat conditions. In the underground cultural center, Mi-jin was leading the last group of genuine civilians, the children and elderly residents, into deep shelters that could protect them from orbital bombardment. The children thought it was an exciting field trip. They had no idea their teachers and parents were preparing to fight a war. "Teacher Mi-jin," asked little Yu-jin, "why are we going to the special rooms today?" "We are having an emergency drill," Mi-jin replied calmly. "Sometimes adults need to practice keeping everyone safe. You will be comfortable here until the drill is finished." The shelter areas were actually advanced bunker complexes with independent life support, communication systems, and enough supplies to keep the civilian population safe for weeks. The children settled in to watch educational videos while their parents prepared to show the aliens why attacking human colonies was a very bad idea. Above them, the Vorthan fleet was beginning its descent toward the surface. War Captain Thex Moore divided his forces according to standard raid protocol. 8 ships remained in high orbit to provide bombardment support if needed. 4 ships descended toward the atmosphere carrying boarding parties ready to begin capturing the human settlement. "All ships report ready," Scout Leader Crixvan announced. "Landing craft are loaded with capture teams. Orbital bombardment ships are in position to provide fire support." Excellent, Thexmore replied. Begin landing operations. This should be concluded within 2 hours. The first Vorthon landing craft entered New Gangwon's atmosphere, heading toward what their sensors identified as the largest settlement. The aliens were confident and relaxed. They had done this 17 times before, and it always ended the same way. But as the landing craft descended toward the peaceful farming colony below, hidden sensors across the planet were tracking their approach. Targeting computers that had been dormant for 3 years came online. Weapon systems that had been disguised as farm equipment began calculating firing solutions. In the communication center, Daeho watched in amazement as displays he had never seen before showed tactical information about the approaching alien ships. Administrator Park, what is all this equipment? Where did it come from? Hyunwoo was calmly monitoring the descent of the Vorthon landing craft. Daeho, what I am about to tell you must never be discussed with anyone outside this room. New Gangwon is not just a farming colony. We are also a forward defensive installation staffed by veterans of the Colonial Defense Corps. But everyone here are farmers. I have lived here for 2 years. People grow crops and raise families and work. Normal jobs. The first minute of the attack began with the Vorthon landing craft descending through New Gangwon's atmosphere, their pilots confident they were approaching a helpless farming world. Scout leader Krixvan led the formation in his command craft, reviewing the capture protocols one final time. His troops were ready to round up human civilians and secure valuable resources. Then the farming equipment started shooting back. Sang-woo's harvester, which had been cutting rice in a peaceful field just moments before, suddenly locked onto the lead Vorthon craft with sensors that no farming machine should possess. The targeting system calculated trajectory, wind speed, and interception vectors in milliseconds. The machine's hidden missile launcher deployed from what had appeared to be a grain storage container. The first surface-to-air missile struck Krixvan's landing craft at exactly 57 seconds into the attack. The alien pilot barely had time to register the impossible sight of a farm machine launching military ordnance before his ship exploded in a ball of fire and crashed into what he had thought was a rice paddy. Across the planet, similar scenes were unfolding. Dozens of disguised farming machines revealed their true nature simultaneously. Harvesters became mobile missile platforms. Irrigation systems transformed into anti-aircraft batteries. Grain silos opened to reveal surface-to-orbit cannons that had been hidden underground for 3 years. "What is happening down there?" War Captain Thexmore shouted as his tactical displays showed impossible readings. His landing craft were under attack by weapons that should not exist on an agricultural world. "Unknown contacts across the entire planet's surface," reported his sensor officer. "I am detecting multiple missile launches, energy weapon discharges, and electronic warfare signals. The humans appear to have significant military capabilities." "That is impossible. Our intelligence showed no defenses." But the evidence was undeniable. The peaceful farming colony was fighting back with sophisticated weapons and coordinated tactics that spoke of professional military training. In his communication center, Hyunwoo watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. "Daeho, you are seeing the real New Gangwon. Every farm on this planet has been a disguised military installation for 3 years. Every farmer has been a soldier waiting for someone to attack our home." Daeho stared in amazement as the displays showed dozens of successful intercepts. But how? When? Who are these people? "Veterans," Hyunwoo replied simply. people who fought in the first settlement wars and chose to retire to quiet farming lives. But we never forgot how to defend human space. The second minute of the attack saw the Vorthons trying to adapt to their impossible situation. The remaining landing craft scattered and attempted evasive maneuvers, but they were being tracked by sensor networks they had never detected. Young Six's livestock farm revealed its true purpose as the central targeting facility for the entire planetary defense grid. What looked like animal pens actually contained the most advanced tracking systems in human space. Young Six had been monitoring Vorthon ship movements since they first entered the system, feeding targeting data to every defensive position on the planet. "Target acquisition complete," Young Six reported through the communication network. "All enemy craft are locked and tracked, feeding coordinates to all firing positions." Bora's greenhouse network became the communication backbone that coordinated the defensive response. Her irrigation pipes were actually fiber optic cables connecting every weapon system on New Gangwon. Her greenhouse computers were military-grade tactical systems disguised as agricultural management software. "Communication network optimal," Bora confirmed. "All defensive units are linked and coordinating. No enemy electronic warfare is affecting our systems." The Vorthans had walked into a trap that had been 3 years in the making. Every aspect of New Gangwon's infrastructure had been designed to look peaceful while serving a military purpose. The aliens had no idea they were attacking one of the most heavily defended worlds in human space. 3 more Vorthon landing craft were destroyed in the second minute, shot down by weapons that emerged from farm buildings, greenhouses, and storage facilities. The crews never had a chance to understand what was killing them. The third minute brought the first orbital strikes. War Captain Thexmore, realizing his ground assault was failing catastrophically, ordered his orbital bombardment ships to begin destroying the surface installations. "Target all enemy positions," Thexmore commanded. "Level their defensive sites." But when the Vorthon ships fired their energy weapons at what they thought were military targets, they discovered another unpleasant surprise. Jiho's power station was not just generating electricity for a farming colony, it was powering planetary defense shields that had been hidden beneath the surface. Energy barriers flickered into existence around every settlement on New Gangwon. The orbital bombardment strikes were absorbed harmlessly by defensive systems that the aliens had never detected. Their sensors had identified the power station as civilian infrastructure, not the primary generator for a fortress world. "Impossible," Thexmore raged. "How can farmers have planetary shields?" But the shields were just the beginning. Jiho's real surprise was the massive energy weapons that had been built into the planet's geological structure during the original colonization. What the Vorthans thought was a power grid for farming equipment was actually the charging system for weapons that could reach orbit. "All surface-to-orbit batteries report ready," Jiho announced through the tactical network. "Orbital targets are locked and ranged, firing on command authorization." Hyunwoo watched the tactical display as the first phase of the battle concluded exactly as planned. The Vorthan landing assault had been completely destroyed. Their orbital bombardment had been neutralized, and they still had no idea what they were really fighting. "Phase 1 complete," Hyunwoo reported to his commanders. "All landing craft destroyed. Orbital bombardment ineffective. Enemy fleet is confused and disorganized. Recommend proceeding to Phase 2. "Authorization granted," came the reply from hidden command centers across the planet. "Begin orbital engagement." The disguised grain silos across New Gangwon opened, like flower petals, revealing massive cannons that had been hidden underground since the colony's founding. These weapons had been built to look like agricultural storage facilities, but they were actually some of the most powerful planetary defense guns ever constructed. In the third minute of the attack, the first surface-to-orbit cannon fired. The energy beam lanced up through the atmosphere and struck a Vorthon cruiser that had been preparing for another bombardment run. The alien ship's shields collapsed instantly, and the vessel began breaking apart as its hull was sliced open by focused energy. "Enemy ship destroyed," reported Yun-Hai from her medical station, which was also serving as a secondary targeting center. "No human casualties reported from any defensive position." War Captain Thexmore watched in horror as one of his cruisers died in space, killed by weapons that had appeared from nowhere. His tactical officer was frantically trying to locate the source of the attack, but the energy beam had come from what their sensors still registered as an agricultural storage facility. "How many ships do we have left?" Thexmore demanded. 11 ships operational, War Captain, but our landing force has been completely eliminated. The humans have destroyed all our ground assault craft. 11 ships against a farming colony. How is this possible? His sensor officer looked up from his displays with an expression of growing terror. "War Captain, I am detecting massive energy signatures across the planet's surface. The humans have been hiding weapons installations under every agricultural facility. This is not a farming colony. This is a fortress." The first 3 minutes of the 7-minute war had ended exactly as the defenders of New Gangwon had planned. The aliens had been drawn into attacking what they thought was a helpless target, only to discover they had assaulted one of the most dangerous worlds in human. Space Hyun-Woo opened a communication channel to the surviving Vorthon ships. "War Captain Thexmore, this is New Gangwon Defense Command. You now have 4 minutes to retreat to safe distance before we demonstrate why attacking human agricultural worlds is a poor tactical decision." In orbit, Thexmore stared at his tactical displays, showing the impossible situation his fleet now faced. They had come to raid a farming colony and found themselves fighting a military installation that could destroy ships in orbit. "Who are you?" Thexmore transmitted back. "We are farmers," Hyun-Woo replied calmly. "We grow food to feed the human colonies. We also grow very tired of raiders who think they can attack our homes and families." The countdown timer on Hyun-Woo's display showed 4 minutes remaining. Time enough for the Vorthons to retreat if they were smart, but based on the movement patterns of the alien ships, it appeared they were going to choose to fight instead. Hyun-Woo sighed and prepared to give the order that would show the Vorthon Empire why humanity's weakest colonies were nothing of the sort. The 4th minute of the battle began with War Captain Thexmore making the worst tactical decision of his career. Instead of retreating from what was clearly a heavily defended military installation, he ordered his remaining ships to increase their attack and attempt to overwhelm the human defenses through concentrated firepower. "All ships, maximum bombardment," Thexmore commanded. "Whatever these humans are hiding, we can destroy it through superior numbers. Focus all weapons on their surface installations." The Vorthon fleet began moving into closer orbit, preparing to unleash everything they had against the disguised military base below. But as they maneuvered into attack positions, they triggered the second phase of New Gangwon's defensive plan. Yun-Hai, working from her medical clinic that doubled as a targeting coordination center, began the systematic identification of every enemy vessel. Her clinic's hidden systems were connected to sensor networks across the planet, giving her a complete tactical picture of the orbital situation. "All units, this is Medical Station Alpha," Yun-Hai announced through the military communication network. "I have precise targeting coordinates on 11 enemy vessels, transmitting target assignments now." What the Vorthons did not understand was that New Gangwon's defensive network had been designed by people who had fought in the first settlement wars. These were not desperate farmers trying to protect their homes. These were experienced military veterans who had spent 3 years preparing for exactly this scenario. The surface-to-orbit cannons hidden beneath the farming installations were not random weapons scattered across the planet. They were precisely positioned elements of an integrated fire control system that could track and engage multiple orbital targets simultaneously. "Target assignment received," reported Sang-Woo from his transformed harvester. His machine was now serving as a mobile sensor platform, feeding tracking data to the larger weapons systems. "Enemy cruiser designation Vorthon 7 is locked and ranged. Confirmed lock on Vorthon 3, added young Sik from his livestock farm that served as the central fire control center. "All targeting computers show green lights." "Standing by for coordinated strike," reported Bo-Ra from her greenhouse communication hub. The Vorthons opened fire with their orbital bombardment weapons, sending massive energy beams down toward the surface installations. But their attacks were absorbed by the planetary shields, which were powered by Jiho's hidden reactor systems. The aliens were expending enormous amounts of energy against defenses they still could not properly identify. "Enemy bombardment ineffective," Jiho reported from the power station. "Shield generators are operating at 60% capacity. We can maintain defensive barriers indefinitely." Hyun-Woo watched the tactical display as the Vorthon ships moved into optimal firing positions. They were maneuvering exactly as the defense plan had predicted, grouping their vessels together to concentrate their firepower. This made them perfect targets for the coordinated strike that was about to begin. "All units execute simultaneous orbital engagement," Hyun-Woo ordered. "Fire." The 5th minute of the battle saw the true power of New Gangwon's hidden defenses revealed. Across the planet's surface, dozens of disguised grain silos opened to reveal massive energy cannons. What had appeared to be agricultural storage facilities transformed into some of the most powerful planetary defense weapons ever constructed. The surface-to-orbit cannons fired as one, sending a coordinated barrage of energy beams up through the atmosphere. The timing was perfect, with multiple beams striking different Vorthon ships simultaneously. The aliens had no time to react or take evasive action. 4 Vorthon cruisers died in the opening seconds of the orbital bombardment. Their shields collapsed under the focused energy assault, and their hulls were torn apart by weapons designed to destroy much larger targets. The ships broke apart in brilliant explosions that lit up the space around New Gangwon. 4 confirmed kills, reported Yun-Hai from her targeting center. 7 enemy vessels remaining, recharging weapons for second salvo. War Captain Thexmore watched in horror as more than half his remaining fleet was destroyed in a single coordinated attack. The tactical situation had gone from bad to impossible. His ships were being systematically eliminated by weapons that his sensors still could not properly identify. "Retreat!" Thexmore ordered frantically. "All ships, emergency retreat to safe distance. Execute random evasion patterns." But the Vorthans discovered that retreating from New Gangwon was not as simple as leaving orbit. The planetary defense system included more than just energy weapons. The 6th minute brought the revelation of the colony's final defensive surprise. As the surviving Vorthon ships attempted to reach safe distance, they found their movement suddenly constrained by gravitational anomalies that had not been there before. Jiho's power station was feeding energy to more than just shields and weapons. Hidden beneath New Gangwon's surface were gravity manipulation systems that could create artificial gravitational fields in space around the planet. These systems had been disguised as geological research equipment, but they were actually military-grade. Interdiction devices. Gravity interdiction field active, Jiho announced. Enemy vessels cannot achieve escape velocity. They are trapped in close orbit. The Vorthan ships found themselves pulled back toward the planet every time they tried to retreat. Their engines were powerful enough to maintain orbit, but not strong enough to break free from the artificial gravity well that now surrounded New Gang 1. "We are trapped," the Vorthan sensor officer reported to his war captain. "Some kind of gravity weapon is preventing our escape." Thexmore realized with growing despair that his fleet had flown into a carefully prepared trap. Everything about this attack had been a disaster from the beginning. The humans had known they were coming, had prepared for their arrival, and had systematically destroyed his forces using weapons and tactics he had never encountered. "Send surrender signal," Thexmore ordered desperately. "Request terms for withdrawal." New Gang 1 Defense Command, came the transmission from the Vorthan flagship. "This is War Captain Thexmore. We request immediate ceasefire and terms for peaceful withdrawal." In the communication center, Hyunwoo received the surrender request with no expression of satisfaction or mercy. He looked at Daeho, who was still staring in amazement at the tactical displays showing the complete destruction of the alien raid. "What should I tell them?" Daeho asked. "Tell them that New Gangwon does not negotiate with raiders," Hyunwoo replied. "Our policy regarding attacks on human colonies is very simple. The 7th and final minute of the 7-minute war began, with the second coordinated orbital bombardment from the surface weapons. The remaining Vorthan ships, trapped by the gravity interdiction field and unable to escape, were systematically targeted and destroyed. Sangwoo's mobile sensor platform provided precise tracking data as the alien ships tried desperately to evade the incoming fire. "All targets locked and tracked. Enemy evasion patterns are ineffective. Young-6 Fire Control Center coordinated the final strike with mathematical precision. Firing solutions calculated. All weapons ready for terminal. Engagement." Bora's communication network ensured that every defensive position fired at exactly the right moment for maximum effectiveness. "Synchronized strike in 3, 2, 1, execute." The surface-to-orbit cannons fired their final salvo, and the last 7 Vorthan warships were destroyed in rapid succession. Energy beams sliced through armor and shields that had been designed to withstand the weapons of other alien species, but not the focused fire of human military engineering. War Captain Thexmore's final transmission was a single word: impossible. Then, his flagship joined the expanding cloud of debris that had once been a fleet of 12 Vorthan warships. The gravity interdiction field continued operating, capturing the wreckage and preventing it from falling to the planet's surface. The debris would be processed later, providing valuable intelligence about Vortan technology and confirmation that the threat had been completely eliminated. "All enemy vessels destroyed," Yun-hai reported from her medical station. "No enemy survivors detected. No human casualties. All defensive systems operating normally." Hyunwoo looked at the tactical display showing the clean sweep of the orbital engagement. In exactly 7 minutes, New Gangwon had gone from appearing to be a helpless farming colony to completely annihilating a major alien raiding fleet. "Phase 2 complete," Hyunwoo announced to the Planetary Defense Network. "All units begin stand-down procedures. Return to agricultural operations mode." Across New Gangwon, the hidden weapons began retracting into their concealed positions. The grain silos closed over the orbital cannons. The farming equipment began transforming back into agricultural machinery. The planetary shields powered down, and the gravity interdiction field gradually released its hold on the debris field. Daeho stared at Hyunwoo in complete amazement. 7 minutes! You destroyed 12 warships in 7 minutes. Actually, Hyunwoo corrected, we destroyed the landing force in 3 minutes and the orbital fleet in 4 minutes. The total engagement time, aye. 2 hours after the last Vorthon ship had been destroyed, New Gangwon looked exactly as it had before the attack began. The farming equipment had been restored to its agricultural configuration. The grain silos had closed over their hidden weapons. The power station had returned to normal civilian energy output. To any casual observer, nothing had changed. But for those who knew what to look for, the aftermath of the 7-minute war was everywhere. In the fields, Sang-woo was conducting post-battle maintenance on his harvester. The machine looked like normal farming equipment again, but he was checking systems that had nothing to do with cutting rice. The missile launchers had retracted properly. The targeting sensors were functioning normally. The armor plating had sustained no damage during the engagement. How does it feel to be a farmer again? Asked his neighbor, Dongmin, who had watched the entire battle from his own disguised position. Good, Sang-woo replied, wiping grease from his hands. Though I think we should upgrade the tracking systems before next season. The Vorthon ships were faster than our intelligence reports indicated. Next season? There will be others, Sang-woo said matter-of-factly. Raiders always test human colonies. Now that we have eliminated one fleet, word will spread. Other alien groups will want to see if the stories are true. Dongmin nodded in understanding. They had spent 3 years preparing for this day, but the defense of New Gangwon was an ongoing responsibility, not a single event. At the power station, Jiho was powering down the massive military systems that had been hidden beneath the colony. The orbital cannons were retracting into their underground storage positions. The gravity manipulation systems were returning to standby mode. The planetary shields were shifting back to their concealed configuration. His assistant, Woo Jin, was helping with the shutdown procedures, still trying to understand everything he had witnessed during the battle. Jiho, how long have these systems been here? Since the colony was founded, Jiho replied, monitoring the power levels as the hidden installations went dormant. New Gangwon was designed from the beginning to serve both functions. We really do grow food for the core worlds, but we also defend this sector of human space. And everyone knows about this? All the adults. When you turn 18 next month, you will receive full briefing on our dual mission. Then you can choose whether to stay and help defend the colony or transfer to a purely civilian world. Woo Jin thought about this as he helped secure the military equipment. What do most people choose? Jiho smiled as he locked down the final system. Most people choose to stay. There is something satisfying about growing food and protecting your community at the same time. At the medical clinic, Yoon Hai was conducting post-battle medical checks on all the defensive personnel. The engagement had lasted only 7 minutes, but operating hidden military equipment while maintaining the appearance of normal farming activities required significant coordination and training. Any injuries to report? Yoon Hai asked Sang-woo as he arrived for his medical check. Minor strain in my left shoulder from the targeting system activation, Sang-woo replied. The new missile launcher deployment sequence puts more stress on the manual controls than the old system did. Yoon Hai made notes in her medical record, which looked like a normal farming injury report but contained coded information about equipment. Performance during combat operations. I will recommend that the equipment designers modify the control interface, Yoon Hai said. We cannot have our people getting injured by their own defensive systems. Her assistant Hai Jin was observing the medical checks with growing understanding. Dr. Nam, how many people were involved in the battle? Everyone with a job that involved hidden military equipment, Yunhai replied. About 3,000 adults across all 5 settlements. The rest of the population maintained normal civilian activities and kept the children safe. But that means most of our neighbors are soldiers. Former soldiers, Yunhai corrected. People who served in the Colonial Defense Corps and chose to retire to agricultural lives. But when raiders threaten human space, we remember our training. At the school, Mijin was conducting afternoon classes as if nothing unusual had happened. The children had spent the morning in the underground cultural center, watching educational videos and playing games while their parents fought a space battle above their heads. Teacher Mijin asked little Yujin, "Why did we have an emergency drill today?" "Sometimes adults need to practice keeping everyone safe," Mijin replied, just as she had that morning. "It is important to be prepared for any situation." "Will we have more drills?" "Probably. But do not worry about it. The adults will always make sure you are safe." The children accepted this explanation and returned to their afternoon lessons. They had no idea that their mathematics problems were actually military calculations, or that their teacher was a former Colonial Defense Corps tactical officer who had chosen to become an educator. But in a few years, when they were older, they would learn the truth about New Gangwon. They would discover that their parents and teachers were not just farmers, but guardians of human space, and they would have the choice to continue that tradition or pursue purely civilian lives. In the communications center, Daeho was helping Hyun-woo prepare the official after-action report that would be transmitted to Earth Command. The report was surprisingly brief for such a significant military engagement. "That is all we are reporting?" Daeho asked, reading the summary on his screen. "New Gangwon Agricultural Collective engaged and eliminated Vorthan raiding fleet. 12. Enemy vessels destroyed. No human casualties. Agricultural operations continuing normally. Requesting debris removal assistance. Should we not provide more details about the weapon systems, the tactical coordination, the intelligence preparation?" Hyun-woo shook his head. "Earth Command knows what New Gangwon really is. They do not need detailed battle reports. They need confirmation that the sector remains secure and that food production is unaffected. What about other colonies? Should they not know about our defensive capabilities?" "Other colonies have their own defensive preparations," Hyun-woo said. "Some are disguised military installations like us. Others have different arrangements. The key is that raiders like the Vorthans never know which human colonies are actually defended and which are truly vulnerable." Daeho was beginning to understand the larger strategy. "So even if there are real civilian colonies, the raiders cannot be sure which ones are safe to attack." "Exactly. Uncertainty is our greatest defensive weapon. The Vorthans thought they were attacking helpless farmers. Now any raider who hears about this battle will wonder if the next human colony might also be full of disguised soldiers." Young-sik arrived at the communications center with the final intelligence report from his livestock farm. All Vorthan technology has been recovered and analyzed. No escape pods, no survivors, no distress signals transmitted before their destruction. "Good," Hyun-woo replied. "Complete operational security maintained." "There is one interesting finding," Young-sik continued. "The Vorthan ships carried intelligence files on 17 previous human colonies they had successfully raided. I think we should forward this information to Earth Command." "Agreed. Include it with the debris removal request." As evening approached, the people of New Gangwon settled into their normal routines. Families had dinner together. Children played in the streets. Adults discussed crops and weather and local news, just as they had every day for 3 years. But there was a subtle difference in the atmosphere of the colony. People moved with quiet satisfaction, the way communities do after successfully working, together to overcome a challenge. Conversations included casual references to today's excitement and the morning's activities. Hyun-woo walked home through the peaceful streets, past houses where lights were beginning to come on in windows. Everything looked completely normal, but he knew that behind those windows were people who had spent the day operating some of the most advanced military equipment in human space. At the memorial statue in the town square, Hyun-woo paused to read. The inscription, First Settlement Wars Memorial, in honor of those who defended human space. The statue had new meaning now. It was not just a memorial to past heroes, it was a reminder that the tradition of defending human colonies continued in places like New Gangwon, where farmers and soldiers were the same people. As he reached his house, Hyun-woo received a priority message on his personal communicator. It was from Admiral Taemin Song of the Colonial Defense Fleet. New Gangwon, outstanding performance today. Your cover remains intact. Continue agricultural operations as planned. Well done. Hyun-woo smiled and deleted the message. Tomorrow, New Gangwon would return to being a quiet farming colony that nobody thought about. The rice would continue growing. The vegetables would be harvested and shipped to other worlds. Children would attend school and learn mathematics that happened to involve tactical calculations, and if another alien fleet appeared in their system, they would discover that humanity's weakest colonies were anything but weak. The aftermath of the 7-minute war was complete. The farmers had won and they were ready to continue farming. But they were also ready for the next time someone made the mistake of thinking that peaceful human colonies were easy targets. 1 week after the 7-minute war, life on New Gangwon had completely returned to normal. The rice fields were green and healthy. The vegetable farms were producing their usual abundant harvests. Children attended school and played in the streets. Adults worked their jobs and spent evenings with their families. To any outside observer, New Gangwon was exactly what it appeared to be, a peaceful agricultural colony on the edge of human space. But in his office, Hyun-woo was receiving a priority communication from Admiral Taemin Song of the Colonial Defense Fleet. The Admiral's image appeared on a secure channel that was hidden within the colony's normal communication systems. Administrator Park, Admiral Song said with obvious satisfaction, "Your performance last week was exemplary. The Vorthon raid was eliminated with perfect efficiency, and your operational cover remains completely intact." "Thank you, Admiral," Hyun-woo replied. "The colony personnel performed their duties exactly as trained. We are ready to continue both our agricultural and defensive missions. I have reviewed the after-action reports from all stations. 0 casualties, complete destruction of enemy forces, and full recovery of intelligence materials. This engagement will serve as a perfect example of how our agricultural defense program is supposed to work." Admiral Song paused, his expression becoming more serious. "Hyun-woo, I want you to understand the larger picture of what you accomplished. New Gangwon is not the only colony like yours. We have 47 agricultural worlds scattered throughout human space. Each one appears to be a vulnerable farming settlement. Each one is actually a fully equipped military installation." Hyun-woo nodded. He had suspected this, but it was the first time anyone had confirmed the scope of the program. The Vorthon. "Intelligence you recovered shows they had targeted 12 human colonies for future raids," Admiral Song continued. 7 of those colonies are agricultural defense installations like yours. The Vorthans would have attacked what they thought were helpless farmers, and instead found themselves fighting some of the best trained soldiers in human space. What about the other 5 colonies? Genuine civilian settlements. That is why your program is so important. The raiders cannot tell the difference between real farming colonies and disguised military bases. This uncertainty protects everyone. The Admiral's image shifted as he accessed additional files. Based on your intelligence recovery, we have identified the location of the main Vorthan fleet base. A joint colonial defense force operation will be launched next month to eliminate their entire raiding capability. Will this affect our operations here? Not at all. New Gangwon will continue exactly as before. Grow food, live peaceful lives, and maintain readiness for the next threat. Because there will always be a next threat. The communication ended, leaving Hyun-woo alone with his thoughts. He looked out his window at the peaceful farming community that was also one of humanity's most important defensive positions. At the school, Mi-jin was conducting her afternoon mathematics class. But today's lesson was different from the usual. Tactical calculations disguised as farming problems. Today we are going to learn about real farming mathematics, Mi-jin announced to her students. How to calculate crop yields, soil nutrients, and harvest schedules. Little Yoo-jin raised her hand. Teacher Mi-jin, will we also learn the other kind of mathematics? Mi-jin smiled gently. What other kind, Yoo-jin? The kind that adults use when they need to keep us safe. The question showed that the children were more observant than the adults had realized. They might not understand the details, but they knew their community had special responsibilities. When you are older, Mi-jin said carefully, you will learn about all the different ways that people protect their homes and families. For now, just focus on learning how to grow good food and be kind to your neighbors. The children accepted this answer, but several of them exchanged knowing looks. They were beginning to understand that New Gangwon was more than just a farming colony. After school, Mi-jin walked to the memorial statue in the town square. She was not surprised to find several other adults there, people who had participated in the battle the week before. Sang-woo was there, still wearing his farming clothes but no longer pretending to be just a simple rice grower. Young-sik stood nearby, his livestock farmer identity now revealed as covering much more sophisticated responsibilities. Do you think the children suspect? Asked Bo-ra, who had arrived from her greenhouse communications center. Some of them, Mi-jin replied. The older ones are asking questions about the emergency drill. They know something important happened. Good, said Yoon-hai, joining the group from her medical clinic. When they turn 18, they will need to make informed decisions about their futures. They should understand what they would be choosing. Ji-ho approached from the power station, having finished his daily system checks. My assistant Woo-jin has been asking about staying on New Gangwon after his 18th birthday next month. I think he wants to join the defensive program. What did you tell him? Sang-woo asked. The truth, that it means committing to a life of dual responsibilities, growing food and defending human space, living peacefully while staying ready for war. The group stood quietly for a moment, looking at the memorial statue. They were all veterans of the first settlement wars who had chosen to continue serving humanity in a different way. Instead of remaining active military personnel, they had become farmers who could fight when necessary. Any regrets? Mi-jin asked. None, replied Young-sik, immediately. This is exactly the life I wanted. Peaceful most of the time, but meaningful when it matters. The children seem happy, added Bo-ra. They are growing up in a safe community where they know they are protected. And they are learning skills they will need, Yoon-hye pointed out. Whether they choose civilian lives or decide to continue our mission. As the sun set, the group dispersed to their homes and families. They had spent the day working their normal jobs, but the conversation at the memorial had reminded them of their larger purpose. In his house, Hyun-woo was writing in a personal journal that he kept hidden in a secure location. The journal contained his private thoughts about life on New Gangwon and the responsibility of protecting human space. Week 157 of New Gangwon operations, he wrote. Successfully defended against Major Vorthan raid. All personnel performed excellently. Colony cover remains intact. Agricultural production on schedule. He paused, thinking about what else to record. The children are beginning to understand that their community is special. This is good. They need to know that peaceful lives require people willing to defend them. But they also need to see that defense and farming are not contradictory. We are not soldiers pretending to be farmers. We are farmers who remember how to be soldiers when necessary. Hyun-woo closed the journal and prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring another day of routine agricultural administration, monitoring crop reports and managing supply schedules. But his desk contained hidden communication equipment that could coordinate the defense of an entire sector of human space. His filing cabinets held agricultural records and military contingency plans. His peaceful office was also the command center for one of humanity's most important defensive installations. As he settled into sleep, Hyun-woo's communicator chimed with an incoming message. He checked the display and saw a single line of text. Deep space sensors detect unknown contact approaching outer system. ETA 72 hours. Hyun-woo smiled in the darkness. Another test was coming for the farmers of New Gangwon. Another opportunity to show raiders that humanity's agricultural colonies were not the easy targets they appeared to be. He sent a brief reply, acknowledged. Will monitor and assess, standing by for harvest season if necessary. Then he went to sleep, confident that his community was ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. 3 systems away, a small alien scouting vessel was approaching New Gangwon to investigate reports of a destroyed Vorthan fleet. The scouts belonged to a different species, but they shared the Vorthan interest in raiding human colonies. They had heard impossible stories about a farming world that had somehow destroyed 12 Vorthan warships. They were coming to see if the stories were true, and if the human colony might be vulnerable to a different kind of attack. The alien scouts had no idea that their approach was already being tracked by sensor networks hidden in livestock farms and greenhouse irrigation systems. They did not know that their ship's capabilities were being analyzed by people who appeared to be simple agricultural workers. They definitely did not know that the farmers of New Gangwon were looking forward to demonstrating once again that humanity's weakest colonies were actually its strongest. The cycle was beginning again. Peaceful days, agricultural work, family dinners, and children learning mathematics that would help them grow food and defend their homes. And somewhere in the distance, another group of raiders was about to learn why attacking human farming colonies was such a poor idea. New Gangwon was ready. The harvest season never truly ended.